Hello everybody, this is Fun Police, and today I am bringing you a video that is going to be covering various divisions in Steel Division 2. For this video, we're going to be taking a look at the base game Axis divisions, and we will specifically be looking at all of those that come with the base game, the free DLC ones, and the addition of the pre-order, because I don't really have a other place to put it in these videos. There are a lot of divisions to cover, so we will cover the Soviet side another video, and then we'll also hopefully plan on doing all of the DLCs over time. This video just is coming out around the time that a patch has come out, specifically adding the Reinforcement Pack 14 with various aces to the base game. So that's when this patch is active, and just make sure that if you're watching this in the far future, some stuff may have changed, some units may be better or worse depending on how things have altered, but I believe this will be relatively up to date as we're kind of reaching the end of Steel Division 2's life cycle, in my opinion. Anyway, if you do like this, make sure to give a like and subscribe. And regardless, let's go ahead and just jump into the first division. 5th Panzer is the original Panzer division of Steel Division 2. It serves as essentially the template of some of the heavier armored divisions, having a large tank tab with plenty of Panthers, Tigers, and other heavy-duty options. It also has a pretty standard infantry tab for Panzer divisions, with Panzer Grenadiers forming the bulk of your infantry. Now, as the baseline Panzer division, it kinda has become outclassed over time. Simply put, it's a bit too heavy for 1v1s, while being a bit too light for larger team games. For 1v1s, relying on Panthers and Tigers is just too expensive, as they have a high cost, and you can't really make a ton of them without kind of running out of everything else. And on top of that, for team games, Panthers and Tigers are serviceable and definitely have their uses, but this division notably lacks any way to deal with something like an IS-2 if it's at 2 kilometers. Now, there is one unique thing that the 5th Panzer has access to, and this is a support tab that is absolutely stacked with 2,000-meter ranged HE lobbers. 2 cards of Grill and an IG-33 card pretty much means that it has more than any other Panzer division, and it allows the 5th Panzer to carve out at least a little niche for it, as it can back up its heavy armor with a lot of ways to engage AT guns and other things that would otherwise be difficult to approach. This almost feels sort of like a Soviet division that has access to a lot of ISU 152s. Now, the 5th Panzer does also have a couple tabs that are notably quite bad. That of the Recon tab having limited light armor and an air tab that is relatively unimpressive. Still, if you're looking for a heavier armored division in the base game, the 5th Panzer is one of the few that has Panthers, and it does have at least 1 or 2 things going for it, but I would probably not take it for 1v1. It's better suited for team games, if anything. 20th Panzer kind of serves as a direct parallel to the 5th Panzer, being its lightweight counterpart, where it lacks much of the heavy armor, but makes up for it by many of its tabs being generally a bit more well-rounded. Standout things include a lot of Panzer IIIs that are low-cost but highly efficient armored units for brawling against enemy mediums. It also has arguably a better overall artillery tab with options like rocket artillery, and its air tab has some things like amazing cluster Stuka bombers. It overall is a division that can be seen as sort of like a mechanized division more than anything, and this allows it to also have a much better infantry tab. Cards like the Panzer Grenadier DP is extremely cost-effective, and it has more forgiving slots that allows it to just generally have a well-balanced approach to any game. The result is this division is probably the better one to take in 1v1. It's focus on medium tanks with a balance to deal with some heavier targets and having just generally good tabs in most of its places allows it to just be a fairly efficient division. However, this does mean that in team games it is a fair bit worse. The lack of heavier armor is noticeable, and although it does have ways to engage them and can maybe lean on artillery to compensate, there are other divisions that are able to sort of better do like artillery spam rather than the 20th Panzer. So if you're going to play this, it would probably be best to stick to a 1v1 game mode where its strengths can really shine. The last non-DLC Panzer division is actually a free DLC one that adds the 16th Panzer Division. Now, the 16th Panzer Division is one of the heaviest Panzer divisions just in the game. And this is because it has access to 6 cards of the King Tiger, which is just ridiculous in terms of its capabilities, serving as one of the strongest and one of the most expensive tanks out there. However, that raw power does come at some severe downsides. Similar to the 5th Panzer, it has a very limited infantry tab with restrictive slots. It suffers from extremely limited anti-tank options, and really the one other tab besides its tanks that really stand out is the air tab, where it is able to spam a lot of Focke-Wulf bombers and backs it up with a decent amount of rocket artillery while it's at it. It is a division that is very, very blunt. It is going to bombard you with a lot of explosives from its artillery and its aircraft, and then use its King Tigers to just bludgeon its way through pretty much anything that is not like an IS-2 or similar. For 1v1s, though, this division is very bad. Simply put, King Tigers are way too expensive to be putting out, and if you get even one of them out, it has to do a ton of work in order to be cost effective. Team games, by the nature of being a bit slower and a bit more laney, can leverage King Tigers and make them absolute monsters, and that is where 16th Panzer shines. If you're looking for a challenge 1v1, you could maybe try to find a way to make this work, but really this is a team game division, and it does that job very, very well. 78th Strum is up next, and it is a very interesting division, being a fairly unique infantry tab with the unique Schützen and Sturmschützen making up the majority of its roster. And this comes combined with pretty much 78th Strum being the only division to have actual cards of Nashorn in them. This makes it a very stacked AT tab and a very stacked infantry tab. Taking a quick look, the Schützen serve as essentially larger Panzer Grenadier squads, and Sturmschützen are extremely large squads all armed with STGs. This makes it an extremely strong division in most infantry combat scenarios, and the AT tab pretty much covers any need for long-range AT, as the Nashorn has an extremely potent 88mm gun on it. This gets combined with access to a lot of rocket artillery and serviceable enough tabs like some Stugs, a basic support tab, and at least a couple solid anti-air options. In all honesty, 78th Strum is a very well-balanced division that can definitely be built in a variety of different ways and works well in both smaller modes like 1v1 and also in larger modes like team games. This build is maybe a bit more tuned towards team games and can be made more so by moving more stuff to Phase C, but it can also work as maybe a balanced version for 1v1. There's a lot to tweak here, and you can definitely build it with some different strengths in mind, but it's just a division that is very well-rounded and can lean on a fairly unique couple tabs that just makes it strong and potent no matter what. Group Hartneck is another very well-balanced mechanized division. it has access to a unique blend of Hungarian troops combined with German troops and a pretty unique mix of those German troops while we're at it. Some unique standout things include the 210 heavy artillery pieces, alongside access to Tigers and Stugs and Hetzers. Pretty much everything in this division blends together to make it a very well-rounded option. The infantry I want to point out specifically as the bulky Hussars in the infantry tab combine with things like Panzer Grenadiers and the Reitjägers, which are very powerful CQC squads. And in general, it is just a division that has almost anything you could want. The main weakness, I would say, is that for heavy tank busting, like to deal with IS-2s and whatnot, it does rely on its air tab, which means that in team games, it can be a bit awkward to play if you run into a lot of those aforementioned heavy tanks. But otherwise, this is a division that pretty much doesn't have any weakness, and is generally considered a very well-rounded and very capable division that you can definitely just do almost anything with. I will also mention that on top of the lack of AT, anti-air is on the lighter side as well, and that can be another real downside. Functional for 1v1, definitely lacking for team games where you need a lot of heavier anti-air. Regardless of that, Grubhartneck is a very well-balanced option, and if you're looking for a division on the German side that is very strong in infantry and has a fairly well-rounded playset elsewhere, this can easily be a top pick in the base game. Then we have the 1st Lovas, which is a full Hungarian division, one of the two in the base game. This is definitely the stronger one, and 1st Lovas has one thing that in particular stands out about it. Its infantry tab is absolutely insane. Simply put, all of its squads are extremely bulky units, and are some of the only ones to have triple LMG units in the game. Combine this with generous availability and pretty much anything you could ask for, and that is a clear standout for 1st Lovas. This gets backed up by a lot of light armor that can be very, very powerful in supporting that infantry. It has a pretty standard AT tab, it has strong anti-air, artillery and air are very functional. 1st Lovas is a division that works as a very well-rounded division that can dominate infantry matchups by just being very, very hard to effectively trade with. However, it does have some weaknesses. No 2-kilometer HE, its infantry are stuck in 70-kilometer-per-hour transports, or 60-kilometer, my apologies, which makes them slow at getting to the front line, and also some lacking tools in terms of heavy tank busting makes it so 1st Lovas is better suited for 1v1, where it can really leverage the tools it has and play aggressively to win before the game drags out, where its limited roster of tools can be outlasted. You could maybe do it in team games by leaning on artillery, but the lack of armor will really be felt, as you essentially only have the Hetzers in your AT tab as actual tanks. Regardless, it's a very good division for 1v1 and plays very well in an aggressive manner due to that amazing infantry tab. Panzer Division Tatra comes in the Lucky 13 DLC, which is available for free, and it serves as a fairly interesting mechanized division. It's very hodgepodge in its buildup, with a lot of various bits and pieces available in limited quantities. Its tank tab is maybe the best option to show this off, as it has only a single card of Stugs, a single card of Panzer IVs, very few Tigers, a couple Panzer IIIs, and even early war tanks like the Panzer 38. This gets combined with infantry like Volkssturm and less than well-equipped Panzer Grenadiers. It does, however, have some pretty standout options. Things like the 105 K35 are fairly powerful. It has options for rocket artillery, even if limited in numbers. It has fairly generous slots in most tabs. Anti-air is a bit on the light side, but otherwise it is a division that kind of fits a similar role to 20th Panzer. It is relying on a decent mix of armor with medium tanks alongside a solid infantry tab and okay tabs elsewhere to be a well-rounded division for 1v1. It's a bit more unique than 20th Panzer and probably a bit worse because it's a bit more ad hoc, but it does have a couple strengths like the Jagdpanzers that are definitely better than what 20th has, so kind of trades here and there between the two. Regardless, I wouldn't really take this for team games. It's a bit too limited in artillery, and air can get pushed out, and its tanks and AT options are better suited for 1v1, where you need a couple heavier options, but you're mainly focused around efficient mediums, which this does have access to. 25th Panzer comes from a free reinforcement pack and serves as maybe the expert of artillery for the Axis in the base game. It has maybe the largest artillery tab and definitely has a bit of everything that makes it very well rounded in that. Most of its other tabs are also functional, although not outstanding. The one unique thing being a fairly generous infantry tab that has access to a lot of infantry division units, with some decent ones like some cheaper Panzer Grenadiers with MG26 and Stoss Troop that give it a bit more well-rounded nature than some of the other Axis divisions. But the artillery tab is definitely the standout. It has access to highly accurate artillery like the K-35 and SK-18, and backs it up with things like the Nebelwerfer 300 alongside super heavy 220mm artillery pieces. If you're looking for a division that is winning through grinding with artillery, 25th Panzer Grenadier might be one of the best Axis options in the base game. And unlike some of the other options that we'll get to shortly, this one is also well-rounded with things like armored cars, it has Stugs, it has some ways to engage heavier armor. Again, like a lot of the mechanized divisions for the Axis, it's limited in anti-air, although its aircraft are also a bit interesting with a lot of Me-410s that are very fast bombers. It's overall a division that can kind of work better in team games because of the sheer power of its artillery, and you can very much lean into it to overwhelm with it. But also, it might be functional in smaller modes by relying on the aggressive nature of its armored cars and highly aggressive vetting that can allow it to leverage a couple strong artillery pieces to win quickly. But I would say team games are where it is best suited. 14th Infantry is classified as an infantry division, but might be better described as a mechanized division, as it interestingly has access to a bit of heavier armor with Tigers, Stugs, and some other options here and there. Its infantry tab also is sprinkled in with some fairly useful options, such as the Bejlit Grenadiers armed with a lot of STGs, Shishrungs that are very cost-efficient 20-point infantry, and a variety of other things. It also is similar to the previously mentioned 25th Panzer Grenadier. It has a fairly strong artillery tab. Probably not as good as the 25th Panzer Grenadier, but it does also contain some super heavy 200+ artillery. It's a division that kinda has been outclassed in similar way to the 5th Panzer, in that it is just got a lot of okay stuff, but it doesn't excel at anything in particular. You can definitely build it to fit a variety of different options, but it's just a division that doesn't have a lot that really stands out as much as it did in the past. It's not outright bad by any means, and I would say you could build it for either 1v1 or team games, depending on which tabs you lean into. Like artillery, if you lean into it, can be the team game carry, or you can lean into some of the other tabs and be more aggressive in 1v1. But overall, it's kind of division that if you want to play with like a couple of the things like the heavy artillery or the Panzer IIs or sort of the infantry tab, it can be an okay option. But there are also others, even in the base game, that kind of fill the roles it has. 28th Jaeger is a division I would best describe as very aggressive and CQC based. Its infantry display this the best, with its entire tab pretty much being comprised of infantry that can fight in CQC. They're all armed with a ton of SMGs, assault rifles, or something like explosives, and it makes the division a bit weaker at long range than other divisions, but very, very powerful because it just doesn't run out of CQC stuff. This gets combined with a fairly well-rounded set of tools that are limited in their numbers, and this leans Jaeger to be a aggressive division. It wants to win quickly because it doesn't really have the long-range capabilities that allow it to drag matches out. But within that aggressive leanings, it has access to almost everything you could ask for. It has like heavy rocket artillery off map. Its aircraft have some unique heavy tank busters to cover for that lack of heavy tank AT and other tabs. It has some super heavy bombers if you want those. And in general, it is a division that just works best for 1v1. Team games is more specific. Notably, if everybody in the team game is wanting to play like a Vanguard or Maverick deck and rush down in the first 20 minutes, maybe 28th Jaeger can work there, but otherwise this is a division that is much more at home in smaller modes like 1v1, where it can just always play aggressively and win before it starts to run out of resources, which it definitely does if the game drags on too long. Korok 559 is the meme division of the Axis side. It is absolutely garbage in almost everything it does. It is the most bootleg of bootleg divisions out there, and there isn't really a tab that can be said as a particularly outstanding one. Some are more capable than others, like its infantry are very spammable, and its air tab does have a fair number of supportive elements, but it also has like severe lacking options. AT, artillery, tanks are all very ad hoc and limited in their capability. If you're gonna play Korok, I highly suggest to play it in 1v1s, but even then, man, you're asking for trouble. This is a meme division, and it is fun. You are going to be fighting an uphill battle, and if you're wanting to spam infantry, that is the one thing it can do. SS Shupo, you have 6 cards of them, and they have crazy availability. You can definitely just spam these non-stop in C and have like 200 infantry or something like that. But otherwise, it is a division that you're going to want to play aggressively if you're actually trying to win with it. It's got a lot of cheap armor and armored cars to make that happen. Its infantry is very spammable, and it has at least a handful of tools to carry it for the first couple phases of the game. But I would definitely only play this division if you're looking to meme around with it, because it doesn't excel at anything, and as such, is just like worse than any other division when you're trying to do a specific thing. 12th Tartalek is the second Hungarian division, and it is not that great of a division. The problem is that unlike Lovas that was talked about earlier, its infantry are a lot more standard in their size with basic equipment and options. On top of that, most of its tabs are fairly basic, with the one unique thing being its artillery tab that can stack up fairly hard with a lot of cheap off maps and some heavy 150mm artillery pieces. Its air tab also does have a lot of ME210s, which are slower than the 410s, but they do pack a decent payload and some AT options that bulk out your otherwise limited tools. It's a division that is, I want to say, kind of similar in meme to the Korok 559, as its infantry aren't outstanding, none of its tabs really scream amazing, and it's kind of cobbling together whatever it can. I would say it's a bit more coherent than Korok because its air and artillery tab are quite a bit better, and that saves the division from being completely pointless, but it's just a division that if it maybe could like spam infantry a bit harder, it could play like a spam outlast you kind of style. But as it stands, it's a division that is just kind of in its overall execution. It's okay, like if on certain maps it's not awful in 1v1, but it's also nothing that's ever going to be like, wow, this is truly amazing. You want to play Hungarians, this is an option, but of all the Hungarian divisions in the game, it is probably the worst one. And as such, you know, I would say it's closer to a meme division than a serious one, and you should largely stick to 1v1s if you're going to play this. First Ski Jaeger is the pre-order division, and that means it's actually not free with the base game. However, seeing as the pre-order is its own thing with only 2 divisions in it, I'm including them at the end of the base games because if you pick it up on sale, you get it for like $1 and it's 2 divisions, and I don't know where else to really put these in the videos, so why not here? Regardless, First Ski Jaeger is a division that is very interesting in its design. Its infantry are very limited in numbers, but they do have high availability, low cost, and are generally well equipped. It has some fairly strong CQC options with a lot of STGs and engineering units, and backs it up with some very interesting tools, such as pretty much the only KV2s in the game that serve as 2-kilometer AT or HE support units. On top of that, it has rocket artillery, a mixture of planes, and for the most part, I would say Ski Jaeger is very similar to something like 28th Jaeger. It wants to play 1v1s, and it wants to play very aggressively, winning in CQC fights, while maybe being a bit more capable in the open than 28th Jaeger due to some of its armor options. Regardless, I would recommend also playing this very, very aggressively, as it does not have the ability to drag the game out. Once you hit 20 minutes, you need to be closing the game out or you're not going to be winning. It is a very aggressive division, and it just really does not have the tools to take it any longer than 20-25 minutes. And after that, you are playing to lose. Still, it's a very interesting division in that way. There's not a lot of divisions like it that play so hyper aggressively or need to. So if you do pick up the pre-order DLC, this might be an option if you're looking to either learn how to be aggressive or if you just want to play something a little bit different with some unique stuff in it. And with that, we are coming to the end of the video. This has now covered all Axis divisions that are in the base game, the free DLCs, and the pre-order division, and you can find all the deck codes down in the description. If you go down there, make sure to also hit the like and subscribe button, as it always helps me know you guys enjoy content like this. Also, while you're down there, make sure to leave a comment. Let me know if any of these divisions are particularly interesting to you. Do you have any of your favorite divisions that come out of this? Some of my favorites from the base game are things like Grubhartnik alongside Korok 559. I like the ad hoc nature of them, and I think, for example, Grubhartnik also contains a very well-rounded division and is probably my favorite base game division outright. Anyway, that is all I have for you today. I want to thank you so much for watching again, and I hope you have a good day.